Well, thanks, Charlie. That was a great introduction. I appreciate it. And you know, Charlie's one of these guys that came into our life very, very early in the campaign, and he is amazing. He's beyond his years. He has built an organization like no one else, and we love you, and I'm honored to call you a friend.
Thank you, Eric. I appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you for all that you've done for us. Thank you. The first time I met Eric Trump was, boy, over a summer, and I kind of came to Trump Tower. I said, I have all these ideas for millennial and student outreach, and most people in politics kind of scoff. They say, yeah, and Eric leaned in and he said, this makes sense. You know, let's bring Don into the room. Next thing I know, you know, they took a chance, took a risk, and we were crisscrossing the country. And so tell us a little about the campaign. Bring us back to that moment, because I love hearing the stories from the announcement down the escalator and all those.
Well, it actually started even before, you know, the actual announcement itself. I'll never forget sitting there with my father, and it was Ivanka, it was Don, myself, my wife, Jared was in there, and he goes, you know what, kids, let's do it. Let's try this thing. And this was a couple days before he went down that famous escalator. Everybody remembers that scene. And he goes, you know what, let's give this thing a chance. Let's try it. And I'll never forget those words, especially the word let's, in that, you know, everything we've ever done, you know, we've done as a family. We always worked together as a family. We fought together as a family. We always supported each other as a family. You know, whenever we traveled as a family. If we vacationed, the very little vacation, we did that as a family.
Trumps take vacations?
Very, very few. But, you know, we're a very, very close family. He said, you know, let's do this. And sure enough, a couple days later, he's going down that escalator, and then he has a famous opening speech. And, you know, kind of the rest is history. Yeah. But the learning experience of what that was for us, we're not a political family. We never were. I don't think I knew what a delegate was when we first entered politics. I don't know if I cared what a delegate was. And, you know, all of a sudden I'm in, you know, Iowa, and I'm in New Hampshire, and I'm in all these places, you know, giving speeches at the caucuses in, you know, gyms in schools and in cafeterias and everything else. And we learned about it very, very quickly, and it was just an amazing ride.
It amazed me, you know, from afar, especially in the primary, how hard you guys worked for your father. You didn't have to do that. I mean, you look at, you know, some of the other campaigns, it was one of the best weapons that you guys had when you think about it. You know, yourself, Ivanka, Don going out there doing radio, you know, doing television, doing local TV, and all of a sudden, like, wow, this is a family that has its act together. I know so many people that said, Charlie, I'm still not sure about Mr. Trump, but I love their family, and I'm going to vote for him because of that. And, you know, I'll tell you, the amount of local outreach you guys did, and I saw it firsthand, you know, with what Don did and what you guys did. Like, how much radio did you do throughout the campaign? It must have been like hundreds of hours, right?
A tremendous amount. It was actually really interesting. One of the things that I think we did very, very well is we'd hop on the radio at almost, you know, 7 a.m. We'd kind of start on the East Coast, and we'd work our way, you know, west. So by, you know, 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock, we were hitting Denver, we were hitting Arizona, we were hitting so many of those markets. And I'll never forget, I mean, we were on thousands of radio shows, but yeah, you know, each time you went on, I'd really take notes. I'd remember, you know, whoever the guy on the other side was, woman on the other side, you know, the radio host, and you almost would befriend them, and they were so thankful that you'd come into a small market and talk to them and talk to other people and talk about the issues that they actually cared about, and you almost became a friend of the show. And it's something that I think we did, you know, incredibly well. But we did fight together as a family, and, you know, we operated very well as a family, and we are. And, you know, quite frankly, I think in this society, family is something that's maybe missing all too often. And I think
that's right.
You know, family values and love for one another, love for family, love for, you know, all things great about America is something that we try to show, but we didn't have to act at it. I mean, we showed it because it's really who we are. It's who we are as Trumps.
Yeah, it was amazing. One of my favorite stories about Eric, I'll tell you, is we were traveling. I was traveling with Don Jr. the last week of the campaign, and we ended up in Trump Tower on Election Day. And, you know, we could have took it easy, done nothing. Next thing I know is like late afternoon, 4 or 5, while Hillary Clinton was taking a nap, actually. It's proven. She was literally taking a nap. I walk into the next office, and it's Eric and Don, literally over a map of the United States. I'll take this radio station, you take this one, I'll do this. They're just pounding out phone calls. And it's just working to the absolute last minute. And I said, how are we going to lose this thing, right? And it was amazing because you guys stepped up time and time again. I said, this is a family that is so tightly knit. And look, you guys we outworked her, honestly. You know, put in more hours, did more phone calls, did more radio interviews, you know, and that really made a difference. And I'll never forget that. It was the very last minute. It was like, well, polls don't close for another 10 minutes. We can get that extra voter in Nevada that might make the difference.
You know, there's only one number that was wrong, and that was the number in Broward County. I'll never forget this as long as I live. And it kept on the internal models, it kept on showing that Broward County had only had, you know, 39% in, and Broward County leans more Democratic than it does, you know, Republican. And we're saying, oh my God, you know, we might lose this. We need to call up the panhandle. We need to call up the panhandle. Well, what actually was the case was Broward County had was 90% in, and so we had a huge margin of error, but there was one number that was just reporting incorrectly. And so Don and I were working the phones. We were working the phones all afternoon. But listen, we operated that way the entire campaign. My wife is from North Carolina.
She's wonderful, by the way. She does a wonderful job.
She's spoken in front of this crowd so many times.
Many times.
She did an amazing job, and Ivanka did an amazing job, and Jerry did an amazing job. And listen, we worked together as a family, and we had a lot of fun.
It's awesome. And unlike Clinton had all these paid political consultants that did nothing, and the Trump family outworked, and it was much closer together. So let's talk about the last year. I make the argument, and some people give me some harsh criticism. I think President Trump is going to go down as one of the most historic and successful presidents of our lifetime. I really believe that. And I've been going to this conference, CPAC, now for 5 years, and I've been hearing speakers say, we need to move the embassy to Jerusalem. And someone says, we need to do massive tax cuts. We need to do massive deregulation. We need better judges. And I kind of look at the last year, I'm like, yeah, we're actually getting it all done. And you know the president is succeeding when CNN says, Donald Trump, promise keeper, right? And I never thought I would actually see an American president be attacked for doing what he said he was going to do.
And got elected.
Exactly.
It's amazing. Just kind of reverting back one more time, I saw that frustration. I saw the very frustration that Charlie's talking about in my father's eyes every single day as during the campaign, and even quite frankly before he announced, right? He'd pick up a paper. United States gives $150 billion to Iran, a country that hates our guts, right? United States gives $150 billion to Iran. He'd shake his head. The United States is 30th in the world in terms of education. He would shake his head. 22 veterans are dying every single day due to suicide, and the VA is doing a terrible job, and he'd sit there and he'd shake his head. And issue after issue after issue, it's why is no one solving them? It's some of them are hard issues, right? But no one's even trying to solve some of these issues. They weren't even working at it. And that's what made him run. My father made a tremendous sacrifice running. And I think everybody sees, I think you pick up any paper any single day and you can see that he's made a huge sacrifice. The way he gets attacked, the way we get attacked, the way our kids get attacked. Horrible. I mean, the viciousness out there. But every single day he would look down. And his whole motto was, I've got to fight for the people who can't fight for themselves. I got to fight for this country. And, fast forward to what Charlie said, right? I mean, he's always been an economic president. That's who he is. My father's an incredible businessman, right? I mean, he wanted to bring jobs back. He's brought jobs back. He wanted to bring manufacturing back. He's brought manufacturing back. He wanted to lower taxes. He lowered taxes. We have the best tax cut ever. Look where the markets are. Look at the run. I mean, the run in the markets is 40% since he took office. You look at 401ks. I mean, there's not a day that I walk down the street where I don't have somebody come up to me and say, I checked my 401k for the first time the other day, and it's up, several $100,000. And please thank your dad for me because I can retire early now. I can finally retire. I never thought I'd be able to retire, but I can retire because of what he's done. And guys, I crisscrossed this country, and I went to these little towns, and I saw factory after factory after factory that was shuttered and that was closed, right? 70,000 factories in this country. 70,000 closed between 1991, right, and 2016, right? 70,000. I wouldn't have guessed that there were 70,000 factories in this country. 70,000 shut in that period of time. And they're opening again, and people want to come to the U.S., and people are excited to build in the U.S. Right. And, the floodgates are opening. The regulation has decreased. We can actually do things again, and that's because of pro-business, pro-American ideas. And he's making us very proud. He's making me very proud.
And without a doubt. And just here's some big numbers. For us doctrinaire conservatives, the number 10. That's 10 circuit court judges confirmed the first year, the most ever by a president in its first year. All of them got 5-star ratings by the Heritage Foundation and the Federalist Society. These are unbelievably conservative judges. The number 1,450, that is how many regulations the president repealed in his first year, and he's just getting started. That is the most regulations repealed by a president in his first year ever. And the other number, which is amazing, the other number is 22. 22 is an interesting number because the president on the campaign trail said, for every new regulation that I put in, I'm going to get rid of 2. Well, the numbers are in. he's done 22 for every new regulation. And we all know regulation is the true prohibitor for business, for entrepreneurs, for people that want to make decisions. And you see the economic confidence. And I love what the president said the other day. He said, for years, I saw countries take their monies overseas, and we're finally seeing that money come back. But the Democrats call this crumbs.
Crumbs.
Crumbs, right?
You know, when Apple comes back to this country and invests $350 billion, it's crumbs, right? Which is, by the way, $39 billion a year in taxes, and it's about 22,000 jobs. That's crumbs. And you know, I reminded my father of this not too long ago. You know, I forget where we were. We might have been I think we were in West Virginia, or we were somewhere, and he said, you know what, my crowning achievement of my presidency would be if I could get Apple to come back to the United States and start making product here again. And I reminded him that a couple weeks ago, right, when they announced the $350 billion. I go, do you remember, I think we were in West Virginia together, and you said that would be the crowning achievement. He's like, I do remember. He kind of
and the press gives him no credit for it, right? He brings Apple back. You know, manufacturing is coming back, all-time confidence, and we just hear about how many Diet Cokes.
Look at these bonuses, right? I mean, how many companies now? Thousands of companies.
Oh, thousands have bonuses.
Thousands and thousands of dollars of bonuses.
But those are crumbs, again.
Hundreds and hundreds of thousands of employees. People are taking that and they're renovating their kitchens, and they're paying for their kids' education, and they're taking vacations, and they're bettering their lives, and they're investing in businesses, and you know, creating an entrepreneurial spirit, bringing that back to this country, which it had largely lost because every time somebody wanted to do something, they were handcuffed by government. I mean, we got in a really scary spot for a very long time where, and I'm a business guy, that's what I do every day, I'm not a politician, but so many more businesses in this country were closing than opening. And it doesn't take a genius to figure out what that will mean long term. If you have more businesses every single year, and by the way, it wasn't more by one or two, it was more by a tremendous amount, closing every single year than opening, where do you end up in a decade? You know, I mean, where is this country? And I can tell you that's not happening in China, and that's not happening in these other places. And, you know, honestly, without him, we would have had our clock cleaned. We were having our clock.
I agree, and I say this, I believe is a gift from God that he won the election. I really do. And I believe it took a businessman, it took a problem solver, it took a creative thinker, and it took someone that challenged the leftist and media orthodoxy. Yeah, I'm going to go to Michigan. I'm going to go to Wisconsin. Oh, you can't win there. No, I'm going to go there and I'm going to win bigly, and bigger than ever before.
Bigly.
How great is bigly, right? Is that not the greatest?
So my last week was spent in Wisconsin. I actually spent a week with Ron Johnson on his bus going all over Wisconsin. Everywhere we went, we had 1,000 people show up. And I go, you know, I'll never forget talking to him that week. And I said, you know, Dad, we are going to win this state. I'm telling you, I'm there. I'm going to every one of these victory offices. Everywhere we go, we have literally thousands of people showing up. I mean, it's unbelievable. We're just traveling all over the state in a bus. We're going to win Wisconsin. You know, we're going to win Michigan, and he did. You know, the message resonated. And you know, the other thing with my father, this country has been in such dire need of having a fighter. We haven't had a fighter in a long time. We haven't had somebody
exactly
who's
right.
And so often, you know, so often he gets knocked for that, and I hate it. He gets knocked for it. Well, did he have to go there? Well, did he have to say this? Did he have to fight back? Yes, because that's who he is. He's a fighter. If somebody punches him, he punches them 10 times harder. And that's what this country needs. This country needs somebody who will stand up for it.
A fighter, not an apologizer, right?
No
for the first time.
No question.
And he communicated to the forgotten men and women in those states. I love it. You know, they say, oh, well, you know, Michigan, Wisconsin were only won because of Russia. Really, Hillary never visited those states in the last 90 days. And the president made a concerted effort, and it was amazing instinct. And it was instinct that you had, instinct that Don had, and Ivanka. And there's a lot of statistics behind it, too. Jared was really instrumental in that. But it was also believing that there are thousands, if not tens of thousands, of swing voters that had never voted in 40 years, not even voted for a Democrat. They just haven't voted. And how many stories did you hear like that on the campaign, right?
Who have been totally forgotten about, who have been overlooked as their factories are shutting down and no one's doing a single thing about it, as they haven't gotten a wage increase. Literally in you know, 10, 11, 12 years. This is the first year where you're starting to see wages increase.
That's right.
They had totally been forgotten about by our government, by Washington. You know, there's a big poster in here, big government.
Sucks. It does suck, though, by the way. It absolutely...
And people all across this country feel that way. I mean, they felt that they got left behind. And you also mentioned religion. And I have to go back to that for a second because I'm telling you, religion won this for us and I can't explain it.
There was something spiritual that happened in the country.
But there was something spiritual that happened, because every single place I went, every day I walked down the street, people came up to me, including 5 minutes ago when we were walking the back hallways in here. We're praying for you. Every single day we're praying for you. We're praying for your family. You know, this is what this country needs. And by the way, it wasn't just Christians. I mean, it was across the board. We're praying for him because this country is in desperate need of somebody that will fight for it again.
That's right. And you look at what the alternative would have been. And I smile every single day when I turn on all those fake networks and they're freaking out about some self-made pandemonium that's going to come back. And
you're on many of those fake networks.
You're not kidding. I'm not going to say any names, but there's plenty of them, all back there, as the president would say. But you know, I focus on in the morning shows. They say, oh yes, you know, the president's really floundering and all this. And you say, hold on a second. 1.2 million jobs created. You know, average wages are going up. Manufacturing confidence at all-time high. The stock market is at 45 all-time highs or something. Absolutely astronomical. 30% increase. If a Democrat president achieved 1% of what President Trump has done in the last year, they would be nominating him as one of the greatest presidents in American history. And it shows the double standard of the American press. And you know what? As a candidate, the president said it best. Sometimes America just needs a fighter and a cheerleader. Sometimes it doesn't always take massive pieces of legislation. Sometimes it takes government to get out of the way, deregulate stuff, cut taxes, cheer on business, get entrepreneurs to take risks, and then all of a sudden you're going to start to see good things happen. And Obama was unable to do that for 8 years, and Hillary Clinton would have been.
I use the word cheerleader a lot because I'm a big believer in it. I'm a big believer of positivity, and unfortunately we say way too much negativity in today's society, in today's world, and sometimes in family life, and it's very, very sad. But my father's always had a great ability to do that. He's always had a great ability to cheerlead, right? You watch him go out on stage. What hat is he wearing? He's wearing a hat that says USA on it. Right?
You think Obama would ever wear a hat like that? I don't think so.
You know what? He's willing to talk about how America is the best place in the world to invest money, how America is the best place in the world, you know, to grow businesses, how the workforce in America, there's no one that can beat us. So we've got the toughest military in the world, that, you know, we can have the best system in the world, that we are the best country in the world. And by the way, everybody hears that. Everybody around the world hears those words. Correct. And they're inspired by it. And again, we've had presidents for too long, quite frankly, on both sides, who have apologized and apologized, and we're sorry for doing this, and we're sorry for doing that, and we're going to give you $150 billion to make you feel a little bit better because at some point we might have hurt your feelings. It's time for us as a country to stop apologizing, and that's what my father's done.
And totally agree. And you look at it, he unapologetically stands for the flag, stands for what this country has always succeeded. Make no mistake, America is the greatest country in the history of the world, and we have a patriot that understands that. And he's not been a byproduct of this incestuous political system. In fact, the quite opposite. He's always been fighting political, like trying to get actual things done. You know, create jobs. You know, allow people to have opportunity. And you look at the seminal moment that's happening here. Are we going to be a country that appreciates success, that understands borders, right? That appreciates sovereignty? Or are we going to go a completely different direction? And I think that's what troubles the left so much. And I have to mention this because I know you and I talked about it. What the president has also done, he's also highlighted the radicalism in the Democratic Party. How they don't stand during the State of the Union when, you know, black unemployment is at an all-time low, or they don't stand at mentions of veterans or God, or even when Steve Scalise was mentioned. There's something horribly divisive about that. And I think the president has shown, really, you're going to oppose God, the flag, and this country? And that's fundamental to what we as Americans really cherish and what we believe.
You know, I've never been more proud of him than the night that he gave the State of the Union, because that
was a great speech, unbelievable job.
But you know, I was there, and I was watching the senators, and I was watching a certain small group that wouldn't stand no matter what it was.
No matter what it was.
Charlie mentioned one of them, African-American unemployment, the lowest in history. You know, more jobs created ever before, lowest unemployment ever, you know, wages increasing, and literally none of them are clapping, or if they're clapping, they're kind of doing one of these. And what I can tell you, maybe the one lesson from this campaign, you know, aside from the religion thing that I said before, but maybe the one lesson that I took out of it is the media of this country does not understand the tone of this country. They don't understand it at all. And, you know, personally, I kind of went on, I shouldn't say highs and lows, but close to that, where I would come home and I would go back to the office and I would have, you know, various networks on TV, and I'd be watching it. I'd be watching their little monologues, and it was all nonsense. And then I would go to Pittsburgh, and I'd go to Ohio, and I would go to, you know, Arizona, and I'd go to Nevada, and I'd go to all these different states. Yeah, you know, America, heartland America. And everywhere I went, for every single Hillary sign, there was 100 Trump signs in the lawns. I mean, that was my barometer. That was my barometer of how he was doing. You know, counting signs, and I kind of did it in my head. Counting the Trump signs versus the Hillary signs. I mean, you know, I'm going to get myself in trouble for saying this, but I saw more Hillary for prison signs in many of these places than I did Hillary Clinton signs. And then I would come back after 6 days, and I'd be so positive, you know, we're going to win this. I'll never forget, before Nevada, the primaries, I mean, I'm walking up and down the lines at one of the polling booths, and everybody, they're high-fiving, they're cheering, they're taking selfies, and I go, we're going to win this thing. I mean, we are going to win this thing. Then I'd go back to New York, and I'd be watching TV, and it wasn't even the same message. It's like they
lived an alternate reality.
Honestly, it was a different...
Like, are they reporting on, like, the Hungarian election or something? Like, what are they talking about?
It was a different planet. And then I remember going on one of the big shows, one of the major networks, one of the morning shows, and they asked me, you know, a very famous man, he asked me, you know, how do you think you're going to do? And this was 2 weeks to the day before the election. I said, I think we're going to win this. He's like, well, our poll has you down by 13%. You know, don't you think you're living in a bubble? And I remember responding back. I go, you know what? I think you're actually the one living in the bubble. You know, I've done hundreds of thousands of miles across the country, and not to be demeaning at all. You know, you're sitting in a little sound studio on Broadway in New York, and you know, you're reporting from here, and you're going to these parties with your little socialite friends, while I'm literally at every single victory office in the country. And hey, I'm not the candidate. I want nothing to do with politics, right? I build hotels for a living, but I'm drawing 1,000 people to some of these locations, marching people to the polls, and I'm seeing the lack of action on the other side, and there was a major, major disconnect that was happening.
Well, I always laughed. We would host these college rallies for Don, and we would get, you know, thousands of people showing up, and I would always go up to the microphone. Now, everyone knows this is Don Jr., right? Like, we do know that, you know, it's not going to be the president, but there was enthusiasm amongst college students. I want to talk a little bit about what's going on in college campuses and just the next generation, because we have so many of our young leaders here, and thank you, guys. And it's very difficult to be a conservative in America today. It's difficult to be a Trump supporter, but it's especially difficult to be a Trump-supporting conservative on a college campus. It's borderline, it's almost dangerous, and it shows the intolerance of the left. And so I know you and I have talked about how important this fight is to keep the movement going, to keep these ideas, you know, having representation on college campuses so critical.
We have to fight. We have to fight in so many ways. And by the way, we're going to be attacked. We're all going to be attacked. Believe me, there's probably no people in the world that get attacked more than us. But it's so important. If we don't stand up for what we believe in, we will lose this fight, and we will have nothing left as a country. But you know what? The societal values do have to be addressed, because you're losing family values. You're losing manners. I see it every single day, and we have to fight for that. And you know, social media has, quite frankly, been, I think, probably a big part of that. You know, it's sad. I posted a picture of my kid the other day. I have a 5-month-old little boy. He's our first.
Congratulations, by the way.
He's got the greatest hair. It sticks right up. It's like perfect Trump hair, right? He's definitely mine. But you know, he's the greatest little kid. And you know, I was reading through Kai. I posted a picture. He's happy. He's bouncing around. You know, I hope your kid. I won't even say what the end of it was, but it was so disgusting. And you know, I just thought in my head, if I ever acted that way as a kid, I don't care what side it was. I don't care to who. I don't care if it was the nastiest person in the world. You know, my parents would have literally killed me. I mean, both of them. I would have been mortified to act like that. And we have to bring this society around where, you know, there are consequences for words, there are consequences for behavior, there are family values, there are manners. And I hope, as much as we're villainized as a family oftentimes, I hope the one thing Ivanka, Don, and I, and Tiffany, and Barron, and all of us stayed going out there and fighting for my father as hard as we did, will show a little bit about the family aspect, which is so critical to American society and society in general.
Absolutely. And you brought up something earlier that I want to go back to, which was kind of the impossibility of what your father pulled off. You know, he beat first the Bush political machine, Then he had to go up against the media political machine and adversaries in both political parties. Remember, the front page magazine covered, you know, never Trump or against Trump or whatever. It seemed like everyone was in full and total opposition, and defying all possible odds, he's not only been elected, but a widely successful president. And now I'm supposed to believe the very same polls that say he's unpopular. It's the same polling agencies that said he's going to lose by 15 on election day. Right. And so I say to myself, have you guys changed your modeling at all? Have you stopped asking, you know, people on the Upper East Side in Manhattan what they think? I'll never forget one of the guys from the fake networks. I don't know one Trump supporter. Well, that's really shocking,
yeah, so you
actually.
live in your ivory tower.
Yeah, exactly.
You
probably live in Manhattan if that's the case. Yeah. And I don't think the president's going to win Manhattan, but you should try going to Iowa and Wisconsin and Michigan. But it kind of shows the elitism of the coast, and the great irony of the whole thing is it took a billionaire from New York to communicate to the center of the country, to find the missing men and women of America. And was always amazing to me, and there's one other point of this that I think we need to talk about more, is how the president has been doing foreign policy-wise. I mean, ISIS is near total obliteration. You see that,
which, by the way, never gets reported on.
That's why I want to bring it up.
I read the papers. I read every paper every single day, and I watch all the shows, and it's very rare, other than maybe one or two networks, that they ever talk about ISIS and the fact that they used to be 44,000 fighters, and now they're well under 1,000, and you know they're dropping a lot of bombs. You know, by the way, Mattis and the generals are doing a very good job keeping us safe.
And the credit should go to the president. He empowered the generals on the ground. He changed the modus operandi and the directive. He cleansed house of a lot of the people that were really infecting it negatively. And I think it's important that we appreciate that, but the media is not going to report on that. And you look in the last year how successful he's been. But looking forward to November, how important that we activists understand this. We cannot lose the House. We cannot lose the Senate. Right. And I know you've been working hard with the RNC on that, trying to keep these chambers, because it's critically important to advance our legislative agenda.
It is critically important. And we will be out there. We'll be fighting. The RNC does a tremendous job. Organizations like yours will obviously be out there fighting. And listen, I think if I was a Democrat right now, I'd be very worried. At the end of the day, people have a lot more money in their pocket than they would have ever imagined. And I think at the end of the day, that's what wins, because no matter what your goals are and aspirations, no matter who you are, if you are somebody out there working, you know, one job, two jobs, three jobs, you know, you have children out there, you know, you can always invest, and you can invest in them, you can invest in a business, you can invest in yourself, you can invest in happiness, quality of life. And at the end of the day, that's what you're providing when you're really an economic president. And I think it's very, very hard to run against a person who's lifted the markets the way he has, run against a person who has defeated ISIS the way they have, who have kept this country safe, who has cheerleaded the way he has for our nation. I would be worried. You know, he's kept his promises. He's surpassed everybody's expectations. And I think even hardcore Democrats, because I speak to many of them, they've really changed their tune. You know, I wasn't sure about him, but he's surpassed every expectation I've had as a president in just about every metric. And why would I ever vote against that? And I would be worried if I were them.
Totally.
I'd be worried as a party. And I think it's just great for this nation.
And you see all the nonsense they're throwing. You see the generic ballot closing. You see Republicans now leading in the generic ballot going into November. There's a ton of Democrats up in these incumbent states: North Dakota, Montana, Missouri, Indiana, West Virginia. Hugely important Senate seats to continue to protect, this president and the agenda. Because make no mistake, God forbid, if the Democrats get control of the House, they're going to try to impeach the president on completely ridiculous and absurd grounds. We cannot allow that to happen. That would severely jeopardize all the gains that we've made. Of course it would, but it would also be just dangerous for the country.
And you know, one of the sad things is, my father is one of these guys who, no matter what, he's a deal guy, right? I mean, whether it's a hotel, whether it's a building, a golf course, no matter what he's ever done, he's a deal guy. You have to work with somebody on every side of the aisle, no matter, if you like them, if you don't like them, if you agree with them on everything. I mean, you have to bring people together. That's what he's done his whole life. I mean, he really entered this thing with the belief and with the notion, and I think he still has that belief, let's work together. I mean, there are smart people on both sides of the aisle. We can benefit this country. Infrastructure is maybe like almost the greatest example of this. What he wants to do with infrastructure, he's excited about it because at the end of the day, he's a builder. But the absolute disdain right? I mean, the absolute pushback to allow him to have any victory, and he's had so many victories, but could you imagine if as a country, as a political class, we actually came together and did smart things? Democrats got involved, Republicans got involved, we came up with smart ideas, we put together smart systems, the people who were best in one field ran with those ideas, you put other people together who really were knowledgeable about this thing, they ran in that direction. I mean, imagine how much as a society you could get done if you didn't have a roadblock at every single turn.
Yeah, they have environmental impact statements that take 25 years to build a road.
And I know that's utopia, but it shouldn't be. Yeah. I mean, it shouldn't be. This is something that I think we should all agree on as a country. These people are paid to serve us, to represent us, to better the quality of life of this nation.
Not the other way around.
And it's incredibly frustrating for me, again, back to the State of the Union, to sit there and watch a group of people when you're talking about incredible accomplishments that every single person should celebrate. Unemployment, African-American unemployment, economy, wage growth, all these items.
ISIS being obliterated.
ISIS being gone.
It's unbelievable.
And it's, all of these items, and not even applauding.
Yeah, and it's really interesting. I think there's two words that we need to focus on in the midterms that are super important. The president has shown great gains, and that's upward mobility. It's like, are you doing better in your life than you were before? And look, part of being upwardly mobile is having more money in your pocket, but it seems as if the Democrats don't want people to be upwardly mobile. It's like, no, we want you to stay where you are. I always say, the left will give you just enough of what you need to stay where you are, but us conservatives are going to get government out of the way so you can go somewhere that you want to be. I think that's the big distinction, because the liberals just want to keep you where you are, and being upwardly mobile is so important, and that goes to the education policy the president's put forth, and the tax cuts, the deregulation. We have new small business startups, black unemployment at an all-time low, which I think is really remarkable and needs to be noted. And I agree with you, because if the Democrat position going into the midterms is impeachment and is, no, those are crumbs. $1,000 for a family in Ohio, those are just crumbs. Well, it might be crumbs for Nancy Pelosi, who lives in, northeast San Francisco, where she eats a $5,000 dinner with her lobbyist husband. That might be crumbs. But it's not crumbs for me, and it's definitely not crumbs for the people in this room. It's not crumbs for the people that voted for the president. And now you see the tax cut have a record high approval rating, so on and so forth. So with the time we have remaining, Eric, I wanted you to talk directly to the students in this room. What is the advice for our generation, for what's going on in the country as we head into consequential midterms, and also to continue to support this president?
Yeah, well, I mean, I could go on for hours about this very topic, but first of all, you're all believers. You wouldn't be here if you weren't a believer in something, right? We all have to fight. No matter what you do in life, you have to fight, right? You're coming out of college, you're going to have to fight for that first job, and you're going to have to fight as you work your way through various companies or various industries or whatever that career is that you decide to take, but fight. Fight for what you believe in. Just because somebody criticizes your beliefs, just because somebody bullies you, shames you on campus, do not back down. I mean, freedom of speech is probably our #1 principle as a party, as a country. There has to be debate. The second there stops being debate in this country, everything shuts down, and we can't have a silenced class. And it's important that you go out there and you keep wearing the red, and you lead these student body organizations, and you keep fighting for what matters, and you register people to vote, and you get out there and you actually vote yourself. And it's just so important. And then in terms of life, do what you love. My father's maybe been the greatest example of that, and it's one of these things that he's always kind of instilled in us. But do what you love. If you love it, you'll be successful at it. If you love it, you'll work hard at it. And I'll never forget in the final weeks of the campaign, really even the final days of the campaign, the November 7th to be specific, and even into the morning of November 8th. I'll never forget, my father did 8 rallies that day in, 5 different states, if I remember correctly. And these were all in front of, 40, 50,000 people. They were all televised by the media. He got on the plane, he went from one place, and by the way, this is not easy, to get up and rant and rave for an hour, off the cuff, right, in front of 50,000 people in a stadium, jump in a car, haul back to a plane, fly to a different state, get off that, hop in a car, go to another stadium, rant and rave for another, hour, do an unbelievable job. I mean, do that 7, 8 times in a day. His last rally, I remember, we went out on stage with him as a family, and I think it was, 2 o'clock in the morning, 3 o'clock in the morning.
New Hampshire, then Michigan, that's right.
Yeah, New Hampshire, and then Michigan, and then we were back to New York. And the point that I'm trying to make in this long story is your heart has to be in it. If your heart's not in it, you just will not have the passion to do that. You will not have the energy to do that. You will not have the desire to do that. And so, take that lesson from what you saw of him on the campaign trail and apply that to your lives, whether it's in public service or if it's in business. Work hard, guys. Fight for what you believe in. Go after the ideas that inspire you. Go after the things you love. Fight for the things you love. And you'll achieve those dreams. And my father's a great example of that, whether it be in real estate or whether it be in show business or whether it be, Jesus, in politics.
That's right. Well, and you look at the story, he is the archetypical, American success story. No matter what someone throws at you, you never give up. You are relentless in the pursuit of excellence.
Fight.
And even when all the chips are down and everyone says you cannot succeed, they said he can't win, all the forces are against you, you punch back twice as hard. What could be a better example to young people than that? And that is why we're so thankful to have the president that we have. So
thank you all. It's great to be here.
Eric, thanks for coming. It's been great, man.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thanks, man.
We love this guy.
So, thank you. Appreciate it. Good
job. Thank you. Thanks, guys.